Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is the daily chart provided by netdania.com. You can click on the link below. I've drawn a number of trend lines in here. You can see the major trend line all the way back from the 2008 low of approximately 8.50 an ounce. And you can see we have a number of touch points: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, close, 6, 7, 8. So that's a very important trend line. The downtrend lines here are two. The first one was the one that I had drawn a while back, which disregards this spike to 37.50. You can see it's, in my opinion, quite valid because it has many touch points. The beginning, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or so touch points before it crosses through this area here in kind of a sideways consolidation. Then the top trend line here is going to be the one that includes the 37.50 spike, and that's going to indicate a $30 price. That's also the resistance that's at this line here. So that's my next target point. The last target point, you can't really see it on this chart, but it's 28.50. We broke out of that today. The other downtrend line is going to be the MACD downtrend line. You can see it's consistent with this downtrend, and we have broken up, and you can see it's just barely positive. So on the weekly, you can see the MACD that I was predicting when it crossed could potentially cross with a serious rally. You can see the rally that came as a result of this earlier cross was quite a dramatic rally, and you can see that here. Actually, that is going to line up with here. So we had two of those. But a significant rally, one that went about $10. Will this rally be as significant? Will we cross the zero line? Will we get up to 3 or 4 or 5 or 10? You can see there's a potential here for a tremendous rally with these factors. So I want to get over to the main story of the night, and before I do that, I want to talk about the question of the night, and this is from Hassled, UK. China to buy silver. Hi, Brother John. I just heard from Silver Doctors that an advisor from the People's Bank of China has advised the Chinese government to buy silver in addition to their gold reserves, and that could send the price of silver higher. And there's a Silver Doctors link. Despite their enthusiasm, Silver Doctors called time on the silver manipulation late last year when they said the newly opened Beijing Futures Exchange will end the manipulation, which it didn't. Is this new China story just another false dawn? If this latest news story is true, how, if possible, could that happen? Since I remember Eric Sprott had difficulty getting delivery of his $500 million order of silver for his PSLV, and he recently said that he was only just allowed / managed to be able to buy another $200 million worth of silver. What I'm trying to get at is that the manipulators seem to be powerful entities which exert influence all over the world. Also, what quantities would China likely buy silver, as there seems to be conflicting reports of the above ground silver reserves? Thanks. Keep up this education, as your insight has influenced me here in the UK. Kind regards, Hassan. Well, there's a lot there, but the main point is going to be this. If anybody, of course China more than anyone, but if anybody in the world decided to start to remonetize silver by having their central bank accumulate physical silver reserves as a back of their currency, then that's end game. That's game over. We're going to see that when we look at the market cap on Apple, when we look at the comparison of the Apple price and the silver price. But China with $2 trillion in reserves, they could just make a small percentage of that in physical silver. Of course, it's complete end game if any nation in the world remonetizes silver, because none of them have silver. They're all stockpiling gold and dollars, but they're not stockpiling silver. So that would just be the end of it, and you'd see triple or quadruple digit silver in a very short time if that were to happen. I have some very serious doubts about that happening, because that would just be so disruptive that it would be frightening. Now, the main story of the night that I'm going to talk about is this Brandon Robb's story. I really don't want to cover this, but I have to because there's a lot of things that need to be said. And for those of you who are not into tinfoil hats and Christianity and conspiracy and things like that, you probably want to tune out now because you're probably not going to like what I'm going to say. Now, this is the main story that broke about this Brandon Robb. He's 26 years old, so I want to say that, how smart were you, or how wise were you when you were 26? I regret using the term nutter, and I was referring to other websites, and I'm sorry that I bunched him in there, so my apologies for that. Now, on to the story. A former Marine involuntarily detained for psychiatric evaluation for posting strident anti-government messages on Facebook has received an outpouring of support from people who say authorities are trampling on his First Amendment rights. Brandon J. Robb, 26, has been in custody since FBI Secret Service agents and police in Virginia's Chesterfield County questioned him Thursday evening about what they said were ominous posts talking about coming revolution. In one message earlier this month, according to authorities, Robb wrote, "Sharpen my axe. I'm here to sever heads." So we're going to look at the legal precedent for these sorts of things, and but before we do that, I want to take you over to a Chris Duane video. Now, this is Chris Duane actually had him as a member of his Silver Academy, or the Sons of Liberty, I believe it was. Chris's channel, Don't Tread on Me, and Truth Never Told, and Silver Bullet, Silver Shield. So you can see here that this is a letter that was written from this Brandon person to Chris, and you can see that if you read this, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but you can read it, and you can also see it on his video. He's quoting Isaiah. He's referring to the Creator. So clearly this person is claiming to be a Christian, and for purposes of explanation and also for clarity, I want to briefly read something, and this is to Brandon as well as to others from the Bible, and hopefully this will clarify my position. This is from Luke 9:51. "And it came to pass, when the time was come that he," that's Christ, should be received up, he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem, sent messengers before his face, and they went and entered into a village of the Samaritans," those are the half-Jews of the northern section of Israel, "to make ready for him, and they did not receive him, because his face was as though he would go to Jerusalem. And when his disciples James and John saw this, they said, Lord, wilt thou that we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elias did? But he turned and rebuked them and said, Ye know not what manner of spirit ye are of. For the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. And they went to another village." So, if you want to understand my opinion about how we should treat other people and Christianity and how that applies, and how I think probably Brandon should understand it, then you probably need to read and study that verse very carefully. Now, this is a Wikipedia article on the topic of involuntary commitment. Now, this is not a new topic. This is not a mystery. A lot of people are talking about First Amendment rights and all the stuff like that. Now, this is something that has been examined in depth over the course of many, many years, and it has to do with state law. We're going to read some of this, and then we're going to jump down to understand the Virginia situation. Involuntary commitment, or civil commitment, is a legal process through which an individual with symptoms of severe mental illness is court-ordered into treatment in the community, and this is, of course, against their will. Now, it goes on to explain the different laws. This is pretty much governed by state law, as we're going to see. But let's jump down here because it's based on all countries and then different jurisdictions. But you see, we have one for Virginia, and this is where Brandon was located. Now, in the state of Virginia, you can see here that as of 2008, Virginia was one of only 5 states requiring imminent danger in order to involuntarily commit someone. But after the Virginia Tech massacre Okay, that happened in the same state. There was significant political consensus to strengthen the protections for society and allow more leniency in determining that an individual needed to be committed against their will. The person has a mental illness and there is a substantial likelihood that as a result of mental illness, the person will in the near future cause serious physical harm to himself or others, as evidenced by recent behavior causing, attempting, or threatening harm, and other relevant information. The person has a mental illness and there is a substantial likelihood that as a result of the mental illness, the person will in the near future suffer serious harm due to lack of capacity to protect himself or harm from others for his basic human needs. Imminent danger was found to have much variability throughout Virginia due to vagueness. The new standard is more specific and the substantial likelihood is more clear. However, in order to not limit potential detainees' freedoms too much, it is characterized by the time limit of near future. Recent acts is legally established to require more than recitation of past events. So that is the Wikipedia article on the issue. Now, there's some more that I want to go to, and this is a legal treatise. This is not authoritative, but it cites various legal opinions, and this is from the Seton Hall Law Review. This is from Adam Lamparello, and he's talking about pre-crime here. Why wait till the crime happens, providing for the involuntary commitment of dangerous individuals without requiring the showing of mental illness. Now, I don't happen to agree with this thesis, but the important point is that he really summarizes the relevant statutes and the court decisions. And you can see here that in this section here, you've got the federal, state level, you've also got relevant statutes, and you've also got the court decisions. So let's go down to page 884. This is the constitutional requirements for involuntary inpatient commitment. And he reviews a number of cases. Of course, the most important case is going to be, let me get down to this here. He talks about Virginia Tech and Eric and Dylan Klebold, the Columbine shooting. But at 884, we get into the details of the legal requirements, and this is constitutional requirements for involuntary inpatient confinement. Now, he's proposing a new standard, but he reviews most important case, and that's going to be O'Connor versus Donaldson. Now, this is actually a case of a guy who was held for 15 years, and he didn't even show any danger of violence. And but the Supreme Court came out and severely restricted this confinement, and they made a number of requirements for involuntary confinement. Now we're going to get down to some of the state cases, because remember, this is state law, so it's going to be, as far as I know, this type of case has not been tested at the federal level. The case that we're getting this from is one that was a 15-year confinement without a threat of violence. But as far as I know, a threat of violence and confinement has not been tested at the federal level. It's been tested at the state courts, and you can see some of their opinions here. In Addington versus Texas, the court held that for purposes of involuntary confinement, the state must demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that an individual has a mental illness that renders him a danger to himself or others. The court clarified this standard in Kansas versus Hendricks, stating that a finding of dangerousness alone is ordinarily not a sufficient ground upon which to justify indefinite involuntary commitment. Critically, however, the court noted that we have sustained civil commitment statutes when they have coupled proof of dangerousness with the proof of some additional factor, such as mental illness or mental abnormality. So that's the standard that the police were acting on. You can see you have other notable state cases. You have Hendricks versus Kansas, or Hendricks and Kansas versus Crane. They upheld a state statute that authorizes involuntary commitment of sexual offenders. and then you have other state cases. Now, if you remember, there was the commitment of the man in Oregon. I haven't been able to find the further information of what happened in that case, but if you remember, that guy was threatened. He was fired, and he was buying guns and threatening things, and they did kind of a pre-crime arrest of him. In Inri Albright, the Kansas Court of Appeals held that a finding of imminency was not required to justify involuntary confinement, holding that such commitment merely requires a showing of potential for doing harm is great enough to justify this massive curtailment of liberty. So I'll link this. It's a very long legal treatise. It goes on and on and on. But the point is that this is nothing new. It's actually old legal idea that someone can be confined if they are in danger of imminent violence and endangering the lives of others. Whether or not you agree with that, I'm not going to say one way or the other, but I'm just trying to point out that this is something that has a long established legal tradition, and of course there's a lot of people that I respect, including the anti-psychiatric commentator Thomas Dawes, who is actually cited in the Wikipedia article. I certainly recommend that you read this as well. Dawes has stated that it's not safe to rely upon psychiatrists because, for the most part, these people are quacks, and their theories are bogus, and they've been proven to be bogus. So how can we rely upon these people to confine people and violate their rights? So a lot of interesting issues. I'm going to leave it at that, but I, again, stand by what I said in yesterday's video, that I strongly recommend that if you're following somebody who is recommending violence, and violence is a solution, you probably want to stop following that person. Now, the last topic I want to look at, this is something that was addressed on Zero Hedge today, and this is the crossing of the overlay of the Apple chart and the silver chart. You can see here I've done on big charts. This is the SLV crossed with Apple, and you can see that we had a tremendous rally in silver before that, back at about the low of 2008. That's about where this chart starts. SLV hasn't been around for that long, but you can see that they were very, very tightly correlated, a very high beta, especially in here, until silver broke significantly higher on the run to 50. And then we had the big crash, the May SmackDown, the September SmackDown, and then we get the meeting again of these two, and then Apple continues higher, and then silver continues lower. But now you can see that the two appear to be rallying together again, and could this be the beginning of a trend change to where instead of going apart, they're coming back together? And does that mean that Apple will go down and silver will go higher? Or does that mean that silver will go much higher and meet Apple? No one really knows. But if we do look at a stock screener, this is one from CNBC. You can see if we do a stock screening based upon market cap, I just did total assets, but you can see the stocks here based on total assets. You've got Apple up here. It's actually up to like $623 billion now in market cap with this today's breakout. But you can see it's a good $200 billion ahead of Exxon, and double the value, more than double the value of both Walmart, Microsoft, IBM, GE, Google, and AT&T, etc., Berkshire Hathaway. So Apple is clearly way out in front as far as market cap, and there's no end in sight. But it's my opinion, as I predicted before, that's going to end in a tremendous crash. But let's just imagine if we took 1% of the value of this stock here, which would be about $6 billion. If we took $6 billion and we put it in the price of silver, what kind of rally would ensue? Well, that's about 200 million ounces, And if they just took 1% of that and bought 200 million ounces of silver, it's my contention that just that money, 1% of what's in Apple alone, would probably result in a price rise above the old high and probably a breakthrough even of 50. So there's still a situation where a tremendous amount of money is going into the paper and very, very little money is going into the physical. And we're not anywhere near a top. We're not even near a bottom in that scenario turning around. And you can see that even just a trickle of the paper money going into the physical would cause a price rise that would just take us out of sight. And we'll talk to you next time.